Hey everybody, welcome to Touching Tornadoes. My name is Conrad, and how are you, buddy? Touching Tornadoes, as always, is being recorded live, which is why I make so many mistakes while doing it. So, forgive me. I just don't have the patience to edit. I feel like if I was to make it too perfect, I'd have too much of an audience. You know, it would be too much of a hassle to even do it. Too much pressure. So I got to keep it a little bit imperfect by doing it live to tape and not editing. So forgive me if there's mistakes, or don't. I don't care. I don't necessarily need your forgiveness in the production value. Um Today on the show, I want to discuss a few things. Last show I talked about kind of my first major manic episode and kind of where it ended, but I didn't really go into, and I probably won't this show, go into like what followed until the next manic episode, because after the first one I still didn't receive any treatment, any professional treatment, and was able to somewhat control my mood, but it took a lot to do so, and it took my exercise routine and no substances, no drinking, and no I did like tried to do meditation. I tried to do all kinds of grounding. You know, I looked into anything that you hear these health nuts talk about. I tried to do. Um, and I don't know why somebody hasn't just come up with health nuts as far as just a product to sell. Just put a picture of whoever that is always promoting healthiness, probably Chuck Norris and I'll just say Joe Rogan. Have their faces be on the nuts and just call them health nuts. Be kind of funny. So I'd buy those. But I just did a lot of techniques throughout that next year after my manic episode into my next one. And so the techniques worked to keep me somewhat stable or right there teetering on the edge of stability. Yet it still wasn't enough to prevent me from having another episode almost a year later, same time of year, the spring, which we're coming up on, so I'm a little bit nervous about it. But looking back on the year that I had, I wouldn't have done a lot of the things that I did had I been kind of my normal self, I think. So in the moment, and that's the thing about this whole disease. In the moment of it, like when you're manic, you don't know that you don't know you're manic. You might know, like, man, it seems like I feel different. You might notice that, but you don't know, especially before you're diagnosed, you don't know that you're manic. You don't have any idea that you're just this maniac running around. You know, you're just like, man, I guess this is what happens when you exercise every day. You eventually get to a point where you have this endless supply of energy, and you can drink vodka at any hour. It doesn't matter, and you want to gamble because you now know the secret to gambling. You think like, man, this is crazy. I guess it's a certain age that you get when you finally know all these secrets, or maybe it's just you prayed every day, which you prayed every day and it just come true. Now you have the secrets to the universe, but it's not really the case. You're manic is the thing. What's happening right there? So, uh, anyways, I want to kind of talk about something different this episode. Not different. I'm still on the topic. Basically, I'd like to discuss just how it getting diagnosed, the process of getting diagnosed, and the acceptance of it, not just by the person being diagnosed, but by family and friends. So the weirdest, or one of the weird things that's happened to me and that I feel is like, clearly there's a couple narratives that go on that are out there. One is it's not, I guess in the uneducated side, I'm going to call it the uneducated side, the side that's not affected by mental illness, the people that are in the dark on mental illness, which I was in. And most people in my family, even though my brother has had it, he's had bipolar since he was 18 or 19, he got diagnosed, but he was epileptic and he had ADD from the time that he was 6. He got diagnosed with that. And so I'd been on medication for all of his life. And so when he had a manic episode where he tried to chase me around and attack me, which is what happened, and he was going crazy on my mom and stuff, he got taken in, and it just got kind of handled. I mean, he got therapy, but it was just putting him on another medication, and it took a while probably, but I don't remember that process because he has always been going through some kind of process. So, and we never paid much attention to it other than, I guess he's getting help, that's just him. Because for me, it's always been him. Since I was 4 years old, he always had some kind of mental thing going on. And so I spent most of my life protecting it, I guess, or trying to. And so I guess my thing is like, when somebody gets diagnosed, when I got diagnosed, I had spent my entire life on a trajectory that seemed like it made sense, where it was work hard, have goals, and start achieving, work to achieving those goals. And so when I put too much pressure and stress on myself, and it got to a point where the switch got flipped, it was like, no, it probably can't happen to him. It was like it's got to be something else. It can't be a permanent thing. And once you get it under control, we want to sweep it under the rug. We want to take it back to it happened, and yeah, we do remember it happening, but we don't want to talk about it no more. Or we want to act like it didn't happen. And it's a very odd thing as somebody that as the person that gets diagnosed, because you have to manage it. I mean, there's a fear inside of you that, this could happen again, because it already happened twice, and then the crash that happens after your mania is real because of you weren't yourself and you didn't know it. You had lost your mind, and you're going back and reliving what you can remember of the mania, and it's like, that's not me, but it was. And so you feel this incredible shame and guilt that you either treated people like you treated them, said the things you said, the behavior you had, and you can apologize, you can do all the things that are in your control now to work through them. You can leave the past behind you. You can reframe all these different things that therapy will tell you to do to try not to hold on to that guilt of it. But even when you let go of all that, when you can convince yourself that you're going to be okay, or people will forgive you, or even if they don't forgive you, you are getting the help that you need to get to move from here forward. When you go through all of that, you still hold on to the fear that it could happen again, or I do. I hold on to that. And so you have to manage it. You just have to keep an eye on it all the time. And I know that my wife keeps an eye on it all the time, and I don't blame her because she had to live through the crazy time. But because of that, it seems like it would be obvious. Okay, for example, I'll put it this way. Since being diagnosed, since having becoming aware of it, there's this first part where once you kind of get to a stable spot and you're reliving this and you don't kind of know who you are now because you thought you were one way because you were, but then at the end of that you were acting like a maniac, so it wasn't you. And then you get the medicine and you kind of, for me, I go back to the way I was before I had mania. I mean, I feel pretty much the same as always, but you think like, am I? And you know that you're not because the genie's out of the bottle, man. And that's the part that's hard for people, or they don't understand that that's what happens. So you build the pressure. If you're already susceptible because it's in your genes to this disorder, and you surround your environment with all the triggers that are going to ignite this disorder, then what happens is if it once it clicks, once it explodes and you have a manic episode, it doesn't matter that it took me until my late mid-30s to have it. It still happened, but because it took so long, people are like, it must have been something else. Once you get out of that stress, once you move on from that time of your life, and you make the changes you have to make, it's like they almost think like they look back at it and say, I don't think that you have bipolar. I don't really think that that's what it is. It's like, well, I want to feel that way too, but when you went through it and you hear every story of others that have went through it that you can find, because that's what I do. I sit there and search all of the other people I can find that have had or been able to say their story or have wanted to say their story and share their story. I try to find all of those people because once I hear them, I'm like, there's so much, you can't deny what you went through as it being part of this disorder. Yet others around you, they're not looking for those stories. They don't want, at least in my circumstance, my family doesn't want to go and read a bunch of books about bipolar disorder and listen to a bunch of podcasts about it and watch hundreds of YouTube videos, all that you can find about it. But as the person who has the disorder, you want them to, because it'd be like, now you realize that it is just a thing. It doesn't mean that I can't manage it, but it is something that I do have to manage from now on, even though it happened later for me than it did for others, including my brother. So, I think that there was this idea that even I had, or anybody, that I was different than my brother. Because I am. Just because two people have the same disorder doesn't mean that our capabilities are the same. There are freaking all of the artists that are famous or whatever, or the political heroes from history, not the ones from now, that like I guess Alexander Hamilton, all of these different people that have had bipolar disorder that have created this country or done these amazing things or are these incredible artists. All these people clearly they have a different set of skills than I have, just because we both have the same disorder. I don't know why there's a thumbs up thing that popped up on my screen right there, but I'm going to let it happen. I have no idea why that happened. I'm just recording. So that was interesting. Am I streaming? I'm not streaming this. Interesting. So I want people that surround me to listen to. I don't want them to look at it, because I don't look at it as reliving my trauma. Doing the last show that I did, that's what kind of reliving the trauma felt like. And I can understand people who were a part of it not wanting to listen to it. And I'm sure that I left out lots of things. You know, I only did an hour. And I was manic for a year. And I was in some stage. I wasn't fully manic for a year, but I was manic for a long time. And so there's a lot. And there's a lot that it's all misplaced and out of order. And so you just highlight it as you're trying to share it. Some of these people share their stories in 10 minutes. Obviously, there was a lot more to it. They're probably the same people that can edit a show or want to. Maybe I should cut this out right now. But I want people that surround me to, I guess it would validate what I went through. That's the biggest thing. It would validate that even if I get back to the person I was before my brain broke, before I snapped, before the triggers went off, before the jar filled up and exploded. And once it does, I don't feel like you can now you might go, there's people that go 20 years, they go the rest of their life without having another episode. And that's the goal. That's what you want. So I suppose you could say that you're cured. But it's kind of like a whole Magic Johnson situation going on. You know, this fella, he goes out there, gets the AIDS somehow, and we're thinking this guy is he's a world famous athlete, and we're gonna have to watch him deteriorate and go through what those people, Dallas Buyers Club kind of thing, go through that. But then all of a sudden, he's fine. We're like, did he beat it? No, he still got it. He's just managing it and can make it. He's in his 60s or something right now, late 50s. Fella's got a yacht, $1 billion. Obviously, he's the exception. Not everybody with AIDS is the same. It's kind of what I'm saying. Not everybody with the BP, the bipolar, is the same. So, but I want those other people that are surrounded, like, if you have to deal with me, like my family, if you have to deal with me, wouldn't you want to be like, I wonder if, like, how normal this is? Normal in the sense of, for those who have bipolar 1, how normal was Conrad's behavior? And if they would do some more watching on it, I think that there could be better conversations that we could have about, they would realize, oh, I did have this episode and I do have to manage it forever now. So, and that doesn't mean that it's like this huge thing that is on the forefront of all of our minds moving forward. It just means that once I find, and I feel like I'm getting closer and closer to finding this stability, to being okay with the fact that it happened, to being okay with accepting that it's something I do have to deal with, and then dealing with it and moving forward. It's almost like, because that is so counter to, because it is so similar to my pre-manic break behavior, and because it's so counter to the way that I felt, the way that I acted when I was manic and the way that I acted once I got diagnosed and went into the crash and went down into the pit, man. Because when that happens and you get out of it, they're like, you just want to forget it. So, but I guess I don't want to, I can't. I don't want to maybe forget it because it's knowing that it could happen is what keeps me working towards always managing it. But that doesn't mean, I guess it doesn't mean it's always right there on the front of your mind. But anyways, I guess I'm just rambling on about it. You just want somebody to talk to about it that they don't have to have experienced it the way that you do. But it would be nice is when you did talk to them about it, they didn't just dismiss it. Either saying, oh, you're doing so good now, I don't even think you had it. I think it was something else. Or, I don't want to talk about it because I don't want to, relive that time because it was awful. It's like, yeah, I know, but if I tell you somebody else's story that has a very similar time that I watched on YouTube, and in my mind, it makes me feel like, basically, it takes the part out where if we're all acting in the same behavior or very similar behavior, it makes me realize that maybe because you think it's your fault, you blame yourself. And people will say, well, don't blame yourself. You can't control. Nobody chooses to have bipolar disorder. And you can hear that all you want. But when you also know it's your job to manage it, you feel like you failed because you didn't manage it. Like you should have noticed that it was happening. You should have noticed that something was going on that was so crazy and out of the ordinary that it must be something that's going wrong with your brain. But during it, you don't notice it. You think your brain is great. One of the best in the world, you probably think. You're Jesus, dude. That's what you think you are. And everybody has such a similar experience with that go manic, it seems. The spiritual side that comes with it, and the part where we all think that we're either prophets or we are the second coming of the Lord, or we are all connected through this, the cosmos and this oneness. And it's so weird that you can go from not having any history with discussing that, caring about it, it's not even part of your normal thinking, to all of a sudden, when you get hit in the head with the bipolar rock, you start thinking that's what happens. Like it knocks this spiritual sense into your head. And all of us that have had the mania, it seems like, have a very similar experience of that veil being lifted for us, the spiritual awakening side of it, which is very strange. And you want to be like, holy crap, I was crazy is what I think. But when you watch all the other people, you think, holy crap, as far as it goes with bipolar people, I'm not crazy at all. I'm just like they are. We all have a very similar story. And it makes you feel, I guess, a little bit less guilty about it. Which I guess is why I'm sharing this stuff with y'all. Because it helped me, and even if I don't have anybody to talk to, like, about it down here, doesn't mean I don't want to talk about it. So I guess I do it here. I guess that's why you go to therapy, to talk about it. But that's different. That's like it's like putting you to work. It's not this. It's trying to rewire your brain a little bit. It's not the same as just sharing your thoughts on everything, on the whole thing. So, and I don't want to talk about it even though my kids went through it to a certain degree, to their own degree, maybe I should say it that way, and are still have to deal with it. I mean, they have to go through the rest of their lives knowing that their dad is bipolar and is different and had this experience. And So you don't want to talk with them about it in a way that I'm reliving it with them, and I don't want to talk. So it's just a little bit different with them. I if I do talk about it, it's different, and I don't want to talk about it with my wife because during it, I mean, especially right after, she's all I had to, and I put the other person was my dad, but he didn't want to, and he still doesn't feel, I don't feel like he wanted to accept it, that it happened. And so even though I was, especially when I crashed and I feel like to find a safe place and I couldn't face the world basically for a little bit, and hiding out at his place for all the time, just feeling like I needed to be around, but he didn't really offer, he didn't understand it. He still probably doesn't. And so it put a fracture in the way that he thought I was before it, then saw that I could break so bad. And then now he's like, it just, he doesn't know how to handle it feels like. And I don't blame him. I wouldn't know how to handle it either if it was, if the situation was flipped. I'm not trying to disparage anybody by not doing what I want them to do. I'm just talking about how it makes me feel, I guess. I feel like if they watched those stories, if they knew that, yes, you can become bipolar, you could have no symptoms of it for a very long period of your life, and then it can happen. And if they needed proof other than me, like I should be the proof. If you read what it is to be bipolar, if you were around me when it happened, you'd be like, there's no question, this is what happened. But if you needed more, you'd want to watch, to me, you'd want to watch the others that also have been diagnosed with the same thing. So I will say this, one of the things I do is listen to audiobooks, and people often reference the same one as the definitive book on the disorder, which is a woman named Redfield Jamison. And maybe it's because she has 3 names. It's a good book. She has a book about it, and it is an audiobook, and I'm pretty sure it's even read by her, and that helps. But she suffered from bipolar 2, which is this more depressive. I think your highs, you usually only get into hypomania. You don't go into full-blown mania, which hypomania is bad enough. It can be very destructive. But your lows can tend to maybe last longer or happen more frequently, your depressive things. And so she suffered with, the suicidal ideation and the suicide attempts many times in her life, but also then became, she was on her way to become a psychotherapist, to become somebody who would actually create a center for mood disorders and be into it her entire life. I think she's still working on it. So people reference her book a lot. I think it's called Touching Fire or something like that. Playing with Fire. Is that? I think it's Touching Fire. But one of the other books that I read, now there is a couple by, I think it was Dr. Phelps and forget the other guy's name. I think it's Chris something. But those 2 doctors have written a few books kind of just on the actual, from a total doctor's perspective of it, like the clinical, speaking of the stages, the differences of the disorder, the spectrum of the disorder, the treatment of the disorder, what to expect from those who have it by using a few case studies of the disorder, and actually talking about the different kinds of the different brands of it. I call them brands, whether it's 1, 2, or the cyclothymia, the mixed states, mixed episodes, stuff like that. And those are informative. And I recommend, if you get diagnosed with this, if you've had a manic episode, you want to do this. You want to read those books. I prefer to listen to them. Reading is kind of still tough for me for some reason. I bounce around too much. My mind's going too far. And maybe it always has. I don't know. But I prefer to listen to those books, and they're good. They just have good advice on them, on kind of what to expect with looking for different triggers, ways to manage it, things like that. So, and there's one that has, there's one by Julie Fast as the author called The Other Side of Me. That's a really good book where it talks about the way that she went through her, and she was late, I think, to getting the disorder, but it talks about her transition pre-diagnosis, and then what she went through and then being diagnosed, and then everything after. And I found a lot of similarities in her story. And then a new one that it's pretty new. It came out last year, I think. It's called Episodes, and it is a great book on. It's written by these two friends, who one of which had this just traumatic upbringing and had a lot of childhood trauma. So there's some similarities between her story and my story, and then when and was very successful and was working in her community with helping people who have went through traumas, and was getting her doctorate, or got her doctorate, I forget. For sure had her master's degree in either counseling or helping these people, community organization, but it just happened to her late in life too. The switch got flipped. The flip got switched, whichever way you want to say it. So, and then her ascent into mania, one of the friends, is described by both of them as Kat was one of the women that this happened to, Kat Alexander, and then her friend Maya, having to be the caretaker of her, and just going through this transition with her as the person who is basically the sane one during the time, and her husband, or her fiance, Kat's fiance, I think Dave. I think they both had Daves. Them having to go through it too, because there's this part that happens where you do, as the person who is going through the manic episode, at least for me and Kat, you're pushing away the people who are closer to you. I definitely did it, and so did she, and so that's why I mean, if it's such a, if you can take yourself out of it, I don't know how to put it. If I could get my wife and my family to read that book, they would realize I couldn't control what was happening to me. And maybe, I guess what I would want is, I guess it's me looking for empathy or something on it. And empathy not based on, I think my family, it sucks that they don't like it now, but just hearing somebody else go through it, and the severity of her story, and the rawness of, which I hate saying that, by the way, but it's true, in which her and her friend tell this story of her, it gives a new sense of empathy. Like, oh my gosh, Conrad went nuts, but apparently when this happens, depending on who it happens to, or the situation surrounding them, or their whole life situation leading up to it, the snap, has a major effect on how it manifests itself. So that's a great book. It's called Episodes. If you are a friend of mine or a family member, I would encourage you reading it or listening to it like I did. I might have the woman that was in that book. I reached out to them. I have been doing that more often, is reaching out to those in the community because I don't have anybody else to talk to about it. So reaching out to those people, and they did get back to me, or one of the women did, and so I'm hoping that maybe I can have one of them on to talk about it. I just don't know how. I mean, I think that eventually that's where this leads to if I continue down this trajectory, this path of talking about bipolar things. I got to get my background set up at some point. I keep changing it. I keep changing the situation here with the camera going on. I just do that just to throw it off, I guess. I'll get this figured out. Maybe it'll stay white. I don't know. Maybe eventually I'll figure out how to put a background behind me so it looks like I'm in a city or something. So, another way that I've been helped that is the YouTube stories. There's a series called This Is My Brave, where people... It was so odd how this happened too. I've been aware of it since I got diagnosed and started looking this stuff up on YouTube. It's one of the first things that'll pop up, this series. And it's people that are sharing their stories of either mania or depression, or it can actually just lead into all different mental health issues that people have suffered from, and are brave enough to get on a podium and share it with others in the community and others that are affected by it, which is pretty much everybody in some way. But by sharing those stories, just, again, providing a sense of community, it just gives those of us who are suffering from it firsthand a feeling like we're not alone. That's what they tell you the whole time, is you're not alone. And it's like, it sure feels like it right now. Because even as reaching out to the people that, it's not the same as, at least for me, everybody that I had is gone. My whole crew from my other podcast, the thing we were working on for 15 years, really haven't heard from any of them. I mean, the oddest part is I've heard from Shannon the most, and he got it the worst. So, but I don't want to put the pressure on him of, hey, not only did I have this manic episode, buddy, and, treated you that way, sorry, which all of that's been said, but now that I'm on the other side, can we go back to where we talk about it, But it's like, it seems like all these ships have sailed, which is good because that's what ships do. But it's bad in the sense of, once you get it figured out what you got, and once as far as what was going on mentally with you, and then once you accept it, you're looking around like, hey guys, where'd you go? Need somebody, the thing I need the most right now is this community of friends to be able to either take my mind off of it or create some kind of, or let me talk about it if I need to, because it's a real thing, a serious deal that I went through, and I got a lot of stuff that's built up with it, but that's all right. I guess I got this. So, anyways, this is my brave. That's what they're sharing this stuff with. They're sharing it maybe to get it off their own chest or to be brave enough to share their story. But it also is helping those of us who need to hear it, just like I've been saying this whole episode. So, what's odd about that is I was actually watching many of those, like most of those speeches. Actually, I don't know if there's most of them. There's a lot of speeches from that organization and on YouTube. And as I was watching one of the lady that created it, Jennifer Marshall is her name. And as I was watching her speech, basically probably from the first conference they had, and kind of her going through her story, she actually messaged me, which was it's happened at the same time. It's one of those connections where it's like, what, this. It was weird. It caught me off guard because I'm watching it, then you get that little notification up in the top of your YouTube on the bell. I click on it, and it's a real nice message of, it's short, just saying like, I also bipolar 1, whatever. But I noticed the name, Jennifer Marshall. I was like, wait a minute. That can't be the same. I'm literally watching this woman. Because first I just put thank you. Because I don't want to always just put a long thing. Or I do, but I don't. But then I was like, wait a minute. It's the same name that I'm watching right now. So I clicked on it and realized, yeah, it's the same person. So she created this series, and hopefully if it comes around, I'll speak at it. I'll get to put my Willy Wonka suit back on and go rub elbows with others and tell a little bit of my Spider-Man jumping off the stadium story. All of that fun stuff. I didn't get to the other good stuff in the second episode story. I'll get to it when I can. Maybe I'll put it all together because it's got to be kind of quick, I think. But that series really helped. So if you're interested, watch that. Read episodes. Read K. Redfield, Jamison. Read that book just so because every time you search for books about it, that's gonna pop up. So might as well get that one out of the way. I hate talking about it like it wasn't as. It was good. Maybe I should read it again. It was great. It's a great book, but it wasn't as I didn't connect to it as much as even the episodes book. So I guess in a way that's a good thing. Trying to think if there's. You want to read the clinical ones. You want to read. But if you started with just the ones I mentioned, it would give you this new idea of what we go through, what we've went through as the sufferers of it. Now, I'm not saying that the cool thing about episodes is it also gave me the perspective of the other person who had to deal with it. That wasn't suffering from the actual disorder, but was the loved one that was the one dealing with it, because that gave me more insight into what my wife had to deal with or what Shannon had to deal with or my dad, and so sure, it sucks hearing that they had to go through a similar thing, but at the same time, it makes me feel like, again, that I'm not alone. So yeah, I don't know. I recommend that if anybody cares. Also, I searched for movies. There's a few of them. That the only free one I think was this documentary where this guy who had been on lithium for years is transitioning off of it and going to like an Eastern medicine to fight it, or a natural. And that's a lot of people. That's another thing. There's this whole community of, again, do you manage it with like diet and nutrition and supplements, or do you manage it with medication? And that's the frustrating, because, dude, nobody wants to hear that they got to take a medication for their whole life. But at the same time, if you went through what me and that cat lady went through, it's like, yeah, I probably have to take a medication my whole life. It's like, probably. That was some crazy stuff. So if I just have to do this and I don't have those kinds of things happen, sure. Then you start reading and watching, and people are like, oh, this is all BS, and you should just be meditating and doing yoga and freaking eating wheatgrass and having massages, and you'll be fine. It's like, possibly, but I was doing those things, and it still happened. So now, if I don't know. Part of me thinks that it could happen, that maybe, I don't know. And again, I talked about it on a previous episode where it's like, we're also, who knows what will happen. The medication I'm on came out in the mid-90s or the 2000s. It's only been out for 20 years. So maybe 20 years from now, there is a cure or something different. Supposedly people are working on it, I imagine. So I'm optimistic. Sure. I'd like to think that I'm now that I've accepted it, it's like I'm optimistic. I'll figure it out somehow. I'll get my lab coat on and start mixing some stuff together and putting it in rats or whatever, bipolar rats that have it. But anyways, there's that movie where the guy tries to convince people that they don't need the medication, and it's pretty convincing, but I'd like to stay married, so I'll stay on it. And then another movie that is like a softer is called Infinitely Polar Bear, and it's got Mark Ruffalo and the actress you would have seen, but I forget her name, and it's about a dad who suffers with manic depression and Mark Ruffalo, and just kind of, and he has to take care of his daughters while his wife goes to grad school in a different city. And I watched that with my son. That was what bothered me. I wanted to watch it with the whole family. I ordered pizza Saturday night, and I told them that I wanted to watch this, and my wife and daughter just didn't want to. And I wish they would have taken a chance on it, because to me it gave a glimpse of, like, even though this is a fiction story, a fictional tale of the disorder, and it doesn't totally depict it accurately or maybe even as extreme, there's moments of it where it's like, at least for my son and I, where it's like that he could see again the connection that it is a thing, and he could see how I could relate to it and he could relate to it, because it's kind of told through the eyes of his children. So anyways, it's called Infinitely Polar Bear. So you could watch that. I think it's free on the Roku channel, which I didn't know was a thing, but it is. And so go for that. I think there's others, and as I stumble across different YouTubes and different movies, I'll discuss them in books, because I'm always looking for them. So anyways, yeah, just check those out. I guess if you know somebody if you know me and you want to, you could watch these things and read them or listen to them. There's some awesome YouTube videos of people telling their story. I mean, I don't consider it, some people be like, that's heartbreaking. I guess if you've gone through it, you're like, that's nice that I wasn't the only one. So maybe watch it with that frame of mind. But yeah, it would help those of us who are, I guess I put it this way, like, if you got breast cancer, I'll call it B cancer. If downloaded with B cancer, you know, and there was a movie, like maybe I'll just say stage 4. It's one of the worst. It's like, who knows what's going to happen, but it seems like it's not a great prognosis. I'm going to act like I know what I'm saying. It's not a great diagnosis. I think prognosis works. It's not a great prognosis. It could be fatal, or it is fatal for certain people. But if you got B cancer, and there was a movie coming out or had come out about a woman who got B cancer and survived and made it, I think, or stories that people who have survived cancer, that's already a thing. It's like walk of life. It's all these people who have survived cancer get together because they all share this journey, this fight as survivors of something that can be fatal, or a lot of times is fatal, depending on what kind of cancer it is. So the fact that there's a movie about somebody that's got the same thing that I got, of course I want to watch it. I mean, I don't want to watch the ones where the people, you know, go the other way and have a horrible outcome. I don't want to watch that very much, but even that I'd probably watch, you know, and then be like, gosh, that could happen. I don't want that to happen. So, anyways, check it out. I just think look at it that way. If there's a movie about, I think that maybe if people were in the military and then there's a, you know, Top Gun comes out, they all think that they're Top Gun. You know, it's like, man, I used to work on planes just like the ones he's flying. Okay, as somebody that didn't work on them and didn't join the Air Force, I'm not connected to Top Gun like others are, and somebody that didn't grow up singing karaoke at whatever, you know, and I don't care much about Tom Cruise too much. I don't mean to hurt his feelings, but I don't care that much. Others do. So it's like I care a lot right now, especially about others who have a similar story as I have, who got hit with the bipolar rock and it knocked their brain loose a little bit, and I want to hear about that kind of stuff. So, and I would appreciate others who are close to me to want to hear about it too, so we would have similar context when discussing it. Or maybe they would see that it's okay for me to want to talk about it, that there's others out there. It's like, just like the latest This Is My Brave, it's called being brave to do it. Yeah, I feel like I'm doing something wrong by saying it, by even talking about this, because nobody around me wants to talk about it. So I get two separate lives going on. One where people think that you're courageous for saying it, but those are just other people who are saying it. So when I'm doing this, it's like, man, there's a lot of people out there that are thanking me for doing it. And then the other side of people who I actually am living with in the real world, or is it a real? I don't want to do that. In the real world, who doesn't want me to share it at all or talk about it? So that's like, why not? You know, I'm a hero on this one thing, or there's not very many things I can do to be heroic after what I went through. And if some people think that it is, or it takes guts or courage or whatever, it's like, yeah, I want to be able to feel like I am giving back in some way, that I'm useful in some way. So, I don't know. Anyways, I guess it's just, if you want to watch those things I recommended, you don't have to. I guess if you're watching this, you probably want to. You probably already watched them, so thank you for that. Thank you for watching this. I'll keep coming on here and kind of talking about what I'm going through and what I'm feeling. And I'll talk more about those episodes I had, because I think that those are what I look for a lot of times when I'm searching this stuff, is just wanting to find a sense of others who have went through it, and getting their story, and it just makes me feel like I'm not alone. So I hope that me talking this way makes you feel like you're not alone. And I would appreciate it if you reach out to me. I'll post this on YouTube first. I'm using a different podcast distributor when I do this, and I might switch it to Spotify because it's free and I don't get enough downloads, or I should just do whatever's free. YouTube's free, so I'll put this out there, and I'll probably switch it over to Spotify. So, because right now I'm limited on how long my episodes can be and how many I can put out a month. So I might switch that over so I'm unlimited, even though they might steal. I don't know if it makes Spotify have the rights to my thing. I don't know why people wouldn't do that. So I'll probably switch it pretty soon. But thank you guys for listening. Again, leave a comment wherever you find it. Send me an email at touchingtornadoes@hotmail.com. And I'll see you next week, or I think it's been 10 days. I'll see you soon. So thank you guys for listening, and I'll see you soon. And leave a comment, and stay healthy, and be good to yourself, and don't let your meat loaf.